Hi folks, Chris Voss here from the chrisvossshow.com, the chrisvossshow.com. Coming with a blog post I want to share with you, of course, review the latest in social media and technology. This is another phone review comparison that we're doing. We do a number of them, especially with the iPhone 5 that just got launched. Be sure to check out our channels on the chrisvossshow.com and also on our YouTube channel. You can see all the latest and greatest coming out there, and so be sure to subscribe, as all the major phone companies are now sending us phones. So, we're going to be comparing two great phones here. One is the Verizon Droid Incredible from HTC, the Droid Incredible 4G LTE, and the other one is from T-Mobile. It's the HTC One S. We reviewed a number of the One series, and the One S is probably one of the most powerful out of its lineup. So we're going to be reviewing that and comparing these two side by side today. So let's get into it. You can find the Verizon phone at verizonwireless.com. That's verizonwireless.com. Be sure to tell them Chris Voss sent you. And for the T-Mobile phone, go to t-mobile.com. That's t-mobile.com. Be sure to tell them Chris Voss sent you, and check out all the great phones they have there at their website. Now, let's take a look at both devices. Both devices are running on Android 4.0 software is how they come out of the box. Let's take a look at the OS systems that we've set up on both these. I believe they've both been upgraded, so let's make sure we know what's being presented to you here. You can see they've both been upgraded to the 4.03 Android version of the software. Both are running HTC Sense software on them. Both are awesome devices. I've been using both of them for a little while, and they really kick butt. They have a finite left to right, as you can see here. It doesn't go all the way around, but most phones don't, from what we find with Android. Some of the other ones are coming out with it. So you can see that here. It's got the notifications menu that you're probably familiar with most Android phones and all that good stuff. With both devices, they both rock and roll. Let's talk about what's inside them when it comes down to the guts. With the Droid Incredible, what you're looking at is a 4.82 height, 2.4 width, and 0.46 in thickness. It has a 4.66 ounce weight, and a LCD color TFT resolution 540 by 960 pixels, 4-inch diagonal screen, Super LCD, running of course on Android as we mentioned before. The processor is a 1.2 gigahertz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 dual-core processor. It has 8 gigabytes of internal storage raw hardware, 4.8 megabytes of internal storage available to the user, and 1 gigabytes of RAM. That makes it a very powerhouse fast device. Looking at the camera, what we're looking at for that, I should mention it has a memory card upgradable where you can add up to 32 gigabytes of memory to the device. And you can add that in the back. We'll show you in a second. The camera has an 8 megapixel camera in the back. It does 1080p, of course, HD resolution, and the front-facing camera is a VGA camera. So that pretty much covers it for the HTC Droid. Let's take a look at the HTC One S. HTC One S has a height of 5.15 inches, 2.56 in width, and 0.31 in thickness. Weight is 4.2 ounces. It has a display that's an OLED full color display, resolution 540 by 960 pixels, and a 4.3 screen inch diagonal width. The Android, of course, as we mentioned, is 4.0 ice cream sandwich. It comes out of the box with 1.5 gigahertz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 dual core processor. Has 16 gigabytes of internal storage raw hardware, 12.1 gigabytes internal storage available to users, the 1 gigabytes of RAM, and of course that makes it very fast too, as I'm sure you can imagine. The camera on it is an 8 megapixel back resolution camera, and it has 1080p HD capabilities. Front facing is a VGA resolution camera. Both cameras, if you get the right adapters, can output to HDMI TV if you plug in the right adapters. HTC makes a great line of those. You can go to amzn.to and see that stuff. So, getting to know both these devices both have, of course, your speaker at the top, front-facing camera here on the Droid. You've got your back button, your home button, and recent apps button. Same thing with the T-Mobile One S. You have your speaker across the top, your front-facing camera, back button, home button, and your recent apps button. They both have pretty much the widgets that you can take and control and access on both devices within the software, so that you can take and make your screens look just about any way that you want. On the back of the Droid, you're looking at the camera. We have the flash lamp that's right here. You have the camera eye. Very small speaker. I'm not really excited about the speaker being where it's at, because if you set it flat down, it tends to muffle a little bit. But it does the job for the most part, what it can. Both these phones, of course, are 4G LTE capable. Has Beats audio on it, as both these devices you can see do. I really like the Beats audio experience. It totally enhances the sound. You can turn it off if you don't like the enhancement, but from my experience, it's a great enhancement. And it's also great if you have the Beats audio lineup of headphones and earphones. So it's a great device that way. Now with the HTC One S, you're looking at, here's the camera eye. You've got your lamp flash there. A pretty good size speaker here at the bottom. Since it curves upward, you tend to get just as much sound out of it if you put it up against a desktop. It's got a nice hard metal back to it. The HTC Droid has got a soft rubberish feeling sort of back to it. It's got a great grip on it, where these upper parts here ergonomically fit your hand and your fingers in being able to hold it. As does the HTC, has kind of a curved arc back to it, if you will, with edges that make it feel ergonomically correct. Now, one difference here, on the HTC Droid, you can take and remove the back, and in doing so, you will have access to, of course, the battery. You can slip this out if you so choose and buy extra batteries. So you can see here there's also a slot for the up to 32 gigabytes of expandable memory by putting a micro SD card in there. And here's where your SIM card would go for the device. On the One S, really the back comes off for one purpose, to be able to put the SIM card in. There's no expandable memory in here, but it's really up to you which phone works best for you. Okay, so here we can see that on the bottom of the Droid we have a small microphone hole, place to pull the back off, of course. Small microphone hole here on the bottom of the T-Mobile. Let's go and spin these puppies around, and of course we can see a whole lot more good stuff here on the top. On the top we've got a power button, microphone hole, and a earphone jack. Power button here on the one, and then an microphone hole, and an earphone jack. Down the right hand side of the devices, you can see it's hard to see, it's a rocker switch for volume up and down, and then on the one we have a rocker switch for volume up and down. Flipping them over, of course, you can see on the left hand side a jack for the syncing and charging on both sides here that you can take and use. Okay, so here we can see the Geekbench 2 scores on both these devices. The Droid performed at 1331, the T-Mobile performed at 1516, and you can see how these break down with each of the respective devices and all that good stuff. The faster gigahertz, of course, is here in the One S. You can see how their scores performed. And you see the individual scores down the row here. You can go ahead and pause the tape at any moment to be able to see all of them. You can see here the floating point performance scores that are there, and then you go ahead and page down some more, and you can see the memory performance scores, so that we can get that data there for you. And then going down, we can see stream performance, and there you go. Okay, so using the AnTuTu benchmark 2.9.2 scoring system here, you can see here that we've got a score of 6,019 with the Droid and 7,018 with the T-Mobile One S. Like I mentioned, the T-Mobile One S is a monster of a phone. Okay, so now here we can see how both devices came out on the quadrant standard benchmarking test. The Droid came in at 4244. 4134 for the One S. You can see some of the stats down here as to how they broke down for both devices. Definitely topping the mark when it comes to other smartphones that are out there. Okay, so here we can see how both devices came out with the Passmark test. With the Passmark performance test, the Droid came in at 1819, the One S came in at 2077. Let's go ahead and page down just a little bit more. GPU test, 4527 on the CPU. I'm sorry, I said GPU, didn't I? CPU, 5198 on the on One S. On the Droid, we came at 2153 on the One S, 3070. On memory test, 2188 for the Droid as opposed to 2401 for the One S. And for the 2D graphics for the Droid, 1959 as opposed to 2D graphics, 2520 on the One S. And on the Droid, 608 to 642 to the One S for 3D graphics tests. Alright, so here we can see the GL benchmarks on both the devices. The Droid came in with 6,582 frames at 58 frames per second, where the One S came at 6,283 frames at 56 frames per second. Alright, so here we can see how both devices came out on the KFS benchmark test. This overall test was 41 frames per second on the One S and 42.139 on the Droid. Okay, so here we have the benchmarking stats. This is the A&E bench apps, and the great thing about these apps we use is you can take and utilize them at home and be able to see how they compare to your device that's currently running. You can see here the Droid came in with native threads of 4,337 and Java threads of 150 against the One S of 4973 and Java 177. Okay, so here we've run the billion counter benchmarking test. This shows how fast the device can count to a billion through its processor and works. It's 24 seconds with the Droid, and it's 19 seconds with the One S. Okay, so here you can see we're doing a test. We're doing a Skype call using Wi-Fi. This is a localized Wi-Fi. And you can see here the video comes out really well across on my iPad 3 that we're receiving the video on. So it's got a great front-facing camera. It plays really good detail on the feedback that's coming from the other device. So you can see here it performs very well in face-to-face Skype and calls that you might make with video and your front-facing camera. It does a really good job. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're testing the camera, the front-facing camera, with a Skype video call, and in this case we are using the T-Mobile network. So we're using not a localized Wi-Fi as we were before, but we're using the T-Mobile network, and you can see here the feed comes out. You can almost see it the same coming out across our system that we're taking using here. So it plays the video that's coming from a source very well and portrays it very well over here. So you can see here the front-facing camera does a great job. Okay, now so this has your pretty much your standard Android operating system, especially the 4.03 or HTC software. If you've taken and seen it, you have the ability to control, of course, up here your flash and all that good stuff. The indicator light's not coming on because they have the battery low. You have your settings button that you can take and hit. You have access to your camera, front, back, self-timer, image resolution changes you want to make, video quality, of course, you can adjust up and down, the review duration of image adjustments that you want to take and make to the quality of the image. You can adjust exposure and all that good stuff. Let's take a look at a few others. Let's see, ISO, white balance. The real nice thing about the Android line, of course, you have a whole lot more customization of the camera than you do with other OSs. Camera options here, you can see autofocus, face detection, smile, capture, camera, all that sort of good stuff. Let's take a look at, you've got auto upload if you want to take and do this. Camera interface where you've got grid, shutter, different video options you may have for video stabilization, different camera options. I think we covered that. So you have all that available to you there. There's different basically camera scenes that you can take and pre-program into the phone so that you can get different lighting scenarios and stuff like that. You can choose HDR, panorama, portrait, group portrait, whiteboard, low light, close-up, etc., etc. And the camera will adjust itself to what it needs to do. You've got a zoom here, in and out, and then you also have the feature of where you have the ability to add different effects. Now, the great thing about these effects is they'll show up real time in the camera so that you can get an idea as to how the effects will look when you do your shot. So, and of course, you can change these to however you want to take and do that. You can, of course, focus by touching anywhere on the screen so that you can get the subject you want to focus. You also have a shutter button for your camera and then a video button which activates your video. Let's take a look at some of the camera shots that we did. Okay, so now let's take a look at the camera shots that we got out of the HTC camera. It seems to be compliant with a lot of the different rear cameras that we see in the HTC product line, especially the HTC One product line. You can see here it takes great sharp photos, great detail, all that good stuff. One thing we have noticed, like I mentioned with the HTC cameras, is the ones of late have kind of jacked up the yellow, blues, and greens in the photos. You can see a picture here, and we use this as a way to show you what happens in certain environments. You can see here, and this is much more defined on the actual camera itself, it's coming through very differently, but the greens come through very thick on here, and of course the floor looks very yellow when this is actually more of a brown color. Now we find that with most of the HTC One phones they do that, and the reason that we presume that they do that is because it makes your photos you take in other environments much more brighter. The images pop with yellow, blues, greens popping out. The challenge is when you get into an environment like this where it's dominated by yellows, blues, and greens, it tends to overrun the camera. So this is one of the reasons that we use this as a test. You can see it's got great detail on the floor. It takes great pictures. You can adjust some of these settings out by going into the customization and everything else. Is it bad? We don't think so. But definitely you want to be aware of it when you go into a yellow, blue, and green environment. Here once again the video, and this is another thing that kind of surprised me on the video. The aperture area that it takes video, it wasn't as wide as some of the other areas that we've seen with other cameras. But it still takes great video, and there's no problem there. You can still see great detail in the shot. Here's a low light shot, and it performed really well with the low light shot and flash shots. Very impressive. This will take a second to kick into gear with the lamp, but you can see here it does a great darken low light shot. You can see the image very well. It doesn't have any problem getting it light up and being able to see detail. Same thing with the flash. It takes a great flash photo. You can see here very well in detail. Now this is a flash in low light, I should say, where we're taking it, and this is almost a darkened image here. You can see great detail on the bike, everything else. This is a great shot for a low light shot. Colors come in really rich, so it performs really well in low light, which was very impressive, and it performs in normal light just as well. So we really like the camera. Very impressive. HTC is building a good one. Now let's take a look at the camera on both these devices, and you can see how that operates. Cameras, of course, to me are some of the most important aspects of a smartphone. You can see here that they'll be very similar. You got controls up here for turning on and off your flash light and bulb. You've got the settings menu here. You can of course do the number of things you can always do through Androids. You can of course do lots of different controls, image resolution, video quality, etc., etc., where you can adjust it up and down, view durations, image adjustments that you can take and make basically just like you would with an expensive camera. You can make definite adjustments to it. You can of course change your ISO, white balance settings. One thing that is nice with the HTC phone is it has a feature where you can shoot up to 20 frames in like an action shot, and then you decide which ones you want to take and keep, and it will delete the rest of them. It also has continuous shooting, which is really, really fast, and so that works out really well. Let's go into camera options. You can see here you've got a few different things you can do with face detection, auto smile capture, widescreen resolution, etc., etc. Video options, you've got different things like stabilization, record with audio, camera interface, of course, the grid, all that sort of good stuff, auto upload, etc., etc. Down here you have the ability to change different scenes, if you will, for camera scenes, HDR, portrait, landscape. These can help adjust some of the auto settings for light and different other issues you may have in shooting environments. With this opaque circle up here, this gives you the ability to create different effects, and the effects become apparent in the lens that you can take and see, and you can choose several different ones that they have available here for you, which is pretty cool. And of course you can choose what you want to take and do. You can see here we have a zoom bar, so we can zoom in and out. And then we also have a shutter button and a button for using the video camera. The portfolio, or area that will keep track of your photos, you can find, of course, there in your bottom right hand side. Now, the colors come out really good on the HTCs, but one thing that's interesting about the HTC One line is they've jacked up the yellow, blues, and greens, and they've basically done it to make the photos pop a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with it. You can adjust it down in the settings if you want, but we have noticed that the colors come out with a lot more yellow, and if you're in a yellow environment, you tend to notice it a whole lot more. This is an example of a shot we did. It takes great photos with the S and both with the X. I mean, I think they're probably the same camera when it comes down to it in their build. But you can see here, this the floor of my kitchen is much darker than this, and you can see here the contribution of the yellows and also the greens. It works very well. The colors in video and in photos look really good. Comes out really nice. There's sometimes when I'm using other smartphone cameras where I have to actually kind of enhance the lighting in post-production. So this gives you kind of that feel and balance to it. You can also see here how it performs in a video setting with taking video. And you can also see here there's a little bit more yellow than what you would see on the photo that's coming through on the video. So very interesting that one. Of course, there's different ways of adjusting this and all that good stuff. So it's not a killer in any way, shape, or form. It's a great camera that's in the S and the X. Let's go into a low light video situation. This is, of course, using the camcorder light, if you will, on the back of the thing. We got great colors, very good details in low light situation. This was a dark area. It was completely black, and the phone lights it up very well and shows it off very well. Flash wise, in a flash environment, this is a low level environment where this was all dark. You can see here the flash is very well lit up the environment. We've got the colors still pop. We've got very accurate shooting and detail. So very great camera on the HTC One S. Okay, so as you can see from our benchmarks, the both devices are very powerful in and of themselves. You can find the HTC Droid Incredible 4G LTE at verizonwireless.com. That's verizonwireless.com. And you can find the T-Mobile, the HTC One S at t-mobile.com. That's t-mobile.com. Tell them Chris Voss sent you. Chris Voss tested, Chris Voss approved. Be sure to check out both their phones and subscribe to our thechrisvossshow.com email feed and our YouTube feed, so you can see all the latest and greatest social media and technology that we're outputting there into the inner tubes, if you will. Thanks for coming by.